Treasurer, thanks so much for your time early this morning.
Good morning.
The Grattan Institute this morning says the government would have to add about $40 billion a year in savings in order to afford the income tax cuts by 2030. Are those figures in line with yours?
No, they're not. In fact, what we have achieved as a government is to reduce the rate of spending growth, Laura, to the lowest of any government in 50 years. This is a real significant achievement. It's off the back of getting a record number of Australians in work and the lowest number of working age Australians as a proportion on welfare in 30 years. We are saying in the budget that spending as a proportion of GDP will be 24.6% in 2019-2020, and then that will fall by the end of the decade to 23.6%. That is still half a percentage point above what the rate of spending was as a proportion of GDP under John Howard in his last year in office.
But the average of your government has been 24.9%. So based on the average of your own performance in this government, not the Howard government, it's 24.9%. And on that average, it would see $40 billion in less spending cuts within the decade, isn't it, Treasurer?
Well, you're just using Labor's language there, Kieran, and the reality is...
No, it's the Grattan Institute, actually.
Well, no, because what we've seen is 24.6% being our spending as a proportion of the economy as a result of more people in work. When your welfare bill is down, that means government spending is down. That's the great success of the coalition government. And we've ensured that we're spending a record amounts on hospitals and schools and on roads, with a $100 billion infrastructure package, with tax cuts, which we've already legislated, with a boost to small business. And we're doing all of that without increasing taxes. That's not what Bill Shorten is offering the Australian people at this election. He's promising $387 billion of higher taxes. We're cutting taxes, we're strengthening the economy, and as you know, we've delivered the first budget surplus in more than a decade, which is really important.
Well, you are sticking with that $387 billion figure. Treasury in recent days has distanced itself from those figures, Josh Frydenberg, and there's been some questions around the assumptions that have been made. So you're sticking with that figure, is that right?
Well, it's absolutely right. And in fact, it coincides with Chris Bowen's own estimates of how much extra tax he's putting on the Australian people. I mean, he turned up at the press club, Laura, just a few days ago, you may have seen, and said the difference between the Coalition and Labor was $226 million on income tax. We have it in our document, based on Treasury costings, at $230 billion. When we talk about the differences in negative gearing and when we talk about the differences in retirees tax that Labor's imposing, they're very similar to Labor's numbers. The reality is the Labor Party hasn't challenged the actual number because they know it's right. But what they say is it's okay to increase taxes. Well, I can tell you not. When the Australian economy is facing drought and flood and a slowing global growth, Labor's answer is higher taxes. We want the horse to go faster. We don't want to put more lead in the saddlebag.
Workers, you've put out some cameos comparing workers on average incomes and a range of incomes on teachers and nurses' wages and so on, and you're saying that they're going to be better off under you. But correct, across the forward estimates, the next 4 years, that Labor has committed to all of those workers earning up to $125,000 a year being equal or better off under Labor. Do you accept that, at least for the forward estimates?
No, I don't, because actually you've got to understand our tax relief and our tax package in two separate parts. Firstly, there's the immediate relief. That's the $1,080 that will be in the pockets of Australians earning up to $126,000 in just 11 weeks' time. So if you're a teacher and you're a tradie as a couple and you're both earning $60,000, that's $2,160 in your pocket in just 11 weeks' time. Then there's the structural reform, Kieran, which kicks in 22, 23 and again in 24, 25, which actually changes the thresholds, for example, of the 19-cent tax bracket, lifting it from $37,000 to $45,000. Now, Labor doesn't accept that. so too they don't accept abolishing the 37 cents in the dollar tax bracket. So you've got NatSem, independent economic modelling, saying that the average full-time earner would be over $1,000 worse off under Labor by the time our plan is rolled out. It's a very clear choice.
Yes.
Labor is offering increased taxes. We are cutting people's taxes.
Treasurer, that is the point, though, that Kieran's making. We've got a couple of election cycles before your full tax plan would kick in. So in the next term, over the forward estimates, you and Labor are exactly the same on tax relief, aren't you?
Absolutely wrong. There couldn't be a more false statement.
What is the difference then?
Okay, let me take you through it. Firstly, on income tax, we have already legislated $144 billion worth of tax relief, which involves also abolishing the 37 cents in the dollar tax bracket. And what we have said in this particular budget is that 94% of taxpayers will pay no more than 30 cents in the dollar. Labor hasn't signed on to that. Then you've got a housing tax from the Labor Party, which it comes at exactly the worst time for the home market. Could threaten our AAA credit rating, could lead to a serious downturn in the housing market, as the Master Builders Association says, costing 32,000 jobs and seeing people's rents right across the country go up. Then you've got a retirees tax that goes against everything that the Labor Party has said when it comes to franking credits. This goes against bipartisan policy for the last two decades.
Workers up
and
to
actually penalises people.
A year,
it actually penalises people.
The same or better off. That's the point. The point is that workers on $125,000 a year or less will be the same or better off over the next term. You haven't disproven that. Everything you've said either relates to those changes that happen beyond the forward estimates, or you're talking about different cohorts, including the retiree tax or other measures.
Well, even in 22-23, putting aside the changes that we've already legislated for 24-25, even in 22-23, Labor hasn't subscribed to what we have said will happen, which is lifting the threshold for the 19 cents in the dollar tax bracket from 37,000 to 45,000. And as you know, that will affect all income earners. But, you know, whether it's the housing tax, whether it's the retirees tax, whether it's the increased tax on superannuation, whether it's the increased tax on family businesses, Labor's answer to every question is higher taxes. So there couldn't be a clearer choice for the Australian people at this election. At a time when we face as an economy challenges, Laura and Kieran, the answer is not to increase taxes on hard-working Australians and families.
You are giving tax cuts to higher income earners in the top tax bracket. Can you explain why that is justified and how much it is going to cost over your tax plan? Because that is something that you're either unwilling to tell us or you don't know.
Okay, let me be very clear with you, Laura. Neither in last year's budget or in this year's budget have we actually changed the rate of tax for those highest income earners. So that's very, very clear. What we have focused on is low and middle income earners. What we are doing is creating a tax bracket where 70% of taxpayers will be within 45,000 to 200,000 so that they avoid bracket creep, and they will pay no more than 30 cents in the dollar. And under our tax plan, the progressive nature of our tax system is maintained. Just the top 5% of taxpayers will pay around a third of the overall tax burden. That actually increases under our plan. Somebody who earns $45,000 will pay just over $5,000 tax, whereas someone who's earning $200,000 will pay over $55,000.
So how much does it cost then for the highest income earners? The difference between the government's plan and Labor's plan, what's the difference in dollar terms for the highest income earners across 10 years?
Well, what is the clear plan is focusing on low and middle income earners. So this is a furphy about how it's focused on high income earners. We haven't changed the rate at all. All our changes are devoted to stopping bracket creep so that average full-time earners are actually better off under our system. We want people to earn more.
But what's the dollar difference? What's the difference between the government's approach and Labor's approach on the high income earners across 10 years? You must have that number.
the difference between the government's approach and Labor's approach on income tax is we're cutting it by $230 billion. They're increasing about $230 billion.
Those on the highest rate.
But Kieran,
over 180,000 a year.
Kieran, I've been very clear to you. We haven't changed in this budget at all the highest rate. So this is actually a line of the Labor Party which is a furphy, because we actually haven't changed the rate for the highest income earners. We've got a more progressive system under us.
Yes, you do. But the Australian Institute Treasurer says that figure is around $77 billion. Is that right?
Yeah. The Labor, they're just making it up.
Okay,
they
but
don't
if
know.
they're making it up, do you know? Can you tell us?
Yeah,
in dollar terms.
I can actually be very emphatic here and very clear that all our focus in our tax relief is on low and middle income earners. The Labor Party do not support in reducing the tax burden for the average full-time earner. The Labor Party do not support the tradies and the nurses and the teachers being better off by over $1,000 under our plan.
But if you say Labor's got a gap of $387 billion, what we're just trying to work out is how much of the $387 billion is a difference in tax treatment for those who earn over $180,000 in a year. That's what it's coming down to. But the government hasn't been able to give us a dollar figure on that.
I'll give you that answer. It's just over $6 billion, because what they're doing is putting an increase of 2% on the highest income earners, and they're calling that a deficit levy, even though they're talking about surpluses. So go and work that out. And then that phases out in 22, 23, when they say they're going to get to, surpluses of 1% of GDP. So the reality is, of that $230 billion, they're increasing the taxes on the high income earners of that just about $6.5 billion. But the overall burden of Labor's tax is falling on retirees, homeowners, renters, people who are putting money into superannuation, small and family businesses, and of course average full-time earners, or people who are earning just over $45,000. They'll be worse off under the Labor Party. So, you can look at the tax equation from any which way. Labor's answer is higher taxes. We're cutting taxes. It's in the budget, and Labor needs to get on board.
GetUp, you may not be aware, is targeting you. Some of the training material suggests that you were part of the coup that removed Malcolm Turnbull, that you failed to get any real action on climate change. Did you know that that's what you're up against?
Oh, look, these are very dirty tactics, Laura. Bill Shorten helped fund GetUp, and now they're doing his dirty work. That's the reality. GetUp is doing the dirty work of Bill Shorten. It's a sad indictment on this so-called impartial body that it goes out telling lies like that. The people of Kooyong can see through that. They know I've worked hard in my local community and continue to deliver for them, whether it's working with disadvantaged women and helping set up a shelter for homelessness, whether it's the work that we've done with the local volunteer organisations, environmental groups, sporting groups. And just the other day we announced $9.7 million for a school for kids with severe autism in Kew. I get around doing the work in my local community, get around telling lies.
Mr. Frydenberg, thanks.
Great to be with you.